that we are live. With that, I will call to order the June meeting of the Glendale Planning and Historic Preservation Commission meeting. As we do, we will begin with a notation on the record that we have all members present, either here live in person or by way of the Zoom call. So Becky, please make a note of that. We also, next order of business is to review the minutes of our last meeting, the May meeting. Members of the commission, we've all had an opportunity to review those minutes. What is your pleasure?
Move approval.
I will second.
Motion second. Any further discussion, members of the commission? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. I assume that was ayes on our remote members. All right. Well, we have a number of items on the agenda. We are going to conclude our meeting tonight with the finalization of our discussion of the Eckstein School. But we have 4 other items that we'll get through, and that should leave us enough time for our deliberations and a vote. So with that, let's begin with old business. That's the request of Jackie Klein at 45 South Lake Avenue, window replacement. Is Ms. Klein online or here in person?
She is participating by Zoom.
Yes. Hello.
Hello, Ms. Klein. Thank you for attending. We obviously remember your presentation from last month, and I believe we gave you some extra time to provide us with some additional information. And I'll let you begin by filling in the blanks, and then we'll take the discussion from there.
Yeah, sure. So we were just looking at vinyl replacement windows for the property at 45 South Lake. Basically replacing like for like. They're wood windows now, but they're rotted and painted shut and haven't been operable in God knows how long. But we are doing a lot of updates to the house, and it's a very old house. And just like looking around the neighborhood, we saw that vinyl windows seem to be acceptable. So we submitted some vinyl windows that we've, been recommended in the past. And I think there was kind of an issue with just kind of one of the details or the profile of the window. So we reached out to David and just asked for what specific vinyl manufacturers and series would you guys approve? And he gave us kind of that list of 3 different options, and we priced all 3 of them and got the lead times and everything. And it looked like Silverline was kind of our best bet. So that was the, apologies, let me fix my screen. That was the Silverline V1 series, double hung, recommended by John Greer, I think, historical architect and consultant to Montgomery Landmarks Commission is what we had in the email. So essentially, like I said, like for like, but we did talk a little bit at the last meeting about whether we would want to do that center mullion, not mullion, mutton, I guess is what they're called. Right. And it was kind of, currently the house doesn't have that detail, but we thought it might kind of add to the character of the house a little bit. So we did price it out with one, if that's still acceptable, but we're happy to go either way.
All right. Well, Ms. Klein, we've had an opportunity to review your supplemental materials. What was the name of the manufacturer? Silverline, is it?
Silverline.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
One of our commissioners is reviewing that now. Do the other members need to see the print materials that were submitted?
No, looked at them.
Okay. Members of the commission, you've seen the supplemental material. You've heard Ms. Klein's description.
The only grill pattern I see listed here is between the glass grill pattern. I don't see a simulated divided light type.
Yeah. Ms. Klein, could you hear that comment?
Yes, sorry, let me pull that up. I'm putting up the spec sheet right
Is
now.
choose from flat or contour profile grills between the glass for easy cleaning. So
Yeah, that was my question as well. So a simulated divided light has a flat grill between the planes of glass and also has another grill on each side. So it simulates regular wood mullions that went all the way through, and the individual panes of glass were put on each side. And if you're going to put those mullions in, the vertical mullions, then it needs to be simulated divided lights.
And it doesn't appear that they offer that, so I guess you're going with the clear glass without the grids.
Right.
Yes, let me just double check. Are you looking at the kind of just the brochure sheet?
I'm looking at Silverline, double hung windows, options and accessories under grill types.
Hold on one sec. Yeah, I think I remember seeing that too. I need to just check really quick on their website that there wasn't something different, because I feel like we saw that they had that option, and maybe it's just not a standard thing. But we're happy to do it without it, if that's not the case. Sorry, one sec.
I personally have no problem with you having the grills if they're applied the right way on the outside of the glass in the interior. But if that's not available, you can't do between the panes of glass is not acceptable.
I would move to approve this with the option of either doing no mullions or coming into David and ensuring that they have a meeting with David and showing them an example of what the divided light would look like, and to prove that it's a simulated divided light. And if they do that, then they could also do that.
Okay.
And if they do have a grid, I would. If they
So
do
on their
have
website, sorry, on their website, they do, if you click on the grills, I did send the link to David too. I don't know if that's something that he forwarded, but they do have the simulated divided light.
Okay.
I mean,
Hopefully it has some contour to it too, and it's not just a flat
Yes,
grid.
it is. Yeah, well, that was the other option you have to choose, is contour or flat profile. And
Yeah,
so we
we
priced
want
it out
the-
how you guys want it. I know that the simulated divided light was a requirement that David had sent us as well.
So this is Dan Mason. I'm looking at their website as well, and their explanation of simulated divided light says simulated divided light offers permanent grills on the exterior and interior with no spacer between the glass. We also offer permanent exterior grills with removable interior grills for cleaning. So it seems like their simulated divided light does not have spacers between the glass.
Got it.
I don't think that's a real problem unless you have a very, very large window. That's where I think you need the spacers personally.
I would suggest that the existing windows are 1/1, and I think they've been there quite a while, and that it could be that 1/1s are more appropriate.
When was the house built?
1866, I think.
Well, then it probably had individual panes if it was built back then, because glass was very expensive to have large sheets.
Well, of course, you're right.
We have a motion to approve either configuration as described by Mr. Green. Was there a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion, members of the commission? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, everybody here said aye. Who said, Tom and Leslie, what were your votes?
Leslie said aye.
Ladies first.
Leslie said aye.
Okay.
Tom said aye.
All right.
Dan Mason
Very
said
good.
aye.
Okay.
Just for perspective, I did get up on their website, and their simulated divided light is just on the outside of the glass. There's not an insert in between. So,
Outside and inside.
right. The problem is different people different companies define simulated divided lights differently when I did all my research on this. Theirs is just on the outside of the glass. They don't have the insert grills. So for the applicant, sometimes they can do these anyway. They do have the flat profile that goes in between. They could put them both in for you. So if you can have David prove that to you, or prove to David that they can do that, then you can do what you want.
I know Marvin calls it simulated divided light without the spacer between the glass, and then they offer that as an option.
Right. Right.
And
Okay.
I find that on very large windows, you need the spacer between it for deflection purposes, and also because you're looking on more of an angle and you can see the space, but on a normal double hung window, you really don't notice that there's a space between the inside and outside grids.
Okay, gotcha. So just to clarify, we would do the 1/1 if they can do the simulated divided light with the flat piece in between.
Correct.
And if not, then we'll just do it without the 1/1.
Correct.
Right.
Okay,
All right.
great.
Thank you, ma'am.
All right, thanks.
Let's move on to the next request. That's the application of Mike O'Connor at 56 East Sharon for window installation. Yes, did you see that?
I'll take the other one or not.
Is Mr. O'Connor available? There you go. Mr. O'Connor, we've had a chance to review your application materials, so we have a good sense of what you're proposing. You can speak as little as much as you want to describe what you're planning to do, and then we'll take it from there.
Doing nothing is what I do best. I'm your boy. We just want to use the room for a 3-season porch, which it is now. And all of that was approved when we put the house addition on back in the early 2000s. So what we're planning are sliding windows in the large existing screened spaces. They'll have screens on the outside. The trim will be painted the same way. The only visible difference will be the joiner post, where the two windows meet in the middle. And there's really not much more to it than that. I've got photos of the side of the house. It'll be barely visible from the street. And I also brought along the drawings of the windows if you want to see them.
We've seen the materials that you've submitted, and I think
Correct.
that included
Okay.
that.
Then
so-
that's what I've got here.
Okay. So essentially, the big windows that are in the part of your addition, you're dividing them in two
It's a
so that they
porch.
slide.
Yeah, right now it's a screened-in porch, and we had planned to get some plexiglass panels that we could substitute for the screen panels in the winter, and then we thought that seemed like a waste of money. Why not go ahead and invest in some windows there and add some value to the house and be able to use it in the winter?
All right. Very good. Members of the commission, questions?
So these large openings will be divided into two.
Correct. There'll be sliding windows that can slide either way.
And did I see one of them was a triple?
No, I think they'll all be double.
All double?
Yeah.
I just want to share that I visited the property this afternoon, and I can attest that they will not be visible from the street. And this is an insertion into a recent porch.
Mhm.
So I'm fine with it.
I move to accept the application as presented.
Second.
All right. Anyone in the audience wish to address this application? Seeing none, members of the commission, we have a motion, a second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. O'Connor. We'll
Thank you.
be in touch with Mr. Lumsden, and he'll set you on the path for the next steps. All right, moving right along, we have a request of Greg Dahlman for a carport and porch installation at 1075 Willow. Is Mr. Dahlman available?
I have their contractor, Mr. Thompson, on the Zoom meeting, so I'm going to go ahead and promote him.
Okay.
Hello.
Mr. Thompson, is it?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you, but we can't see you. I don't know if you can see us.
I can see you.
But, okay. We've had an opportunity to review the application materials. We normally will give the applicant an opportunity to explain the application, and then we'll take it from there. So, Mr. Thompson, if you wouldn't mind, you have the floor.
So from what I understand, to do the carport and to extend the deck, I would be infringing on the right-of-ways, 40 foot in the front and 10 feet on the side. So I'm guessing I just need the approval to do the roof and the decking.
All right. David, could you explain, give us a little bit more background about what Mr. Thompson just described?
I'm sorry, I was away from the computer. Can you repeat yourself?
Yeah, Mr. Thompson, you asking me to repeat myself, or are you asking Mr. Thompson?
Mr. Thompson, sorry, Tom.
I can repeat it. So from my understanding, we submitted to do the carport, which was explained to me that I was in the right of way. So I want to take that off. And
Okay.
also we wanted to extend the front porch 3 feet, and that would put me like 6 inches within the right of way. So I'm assuming that I couldn't get a variance for that.
So I apologize for missing that. Yeah, I spoke with Mr. Thompson earlier, and the proposed carport and porch extension based on site plans and dimensions he provided would encroach within the side yard setback for the carport and then the front yard setback for the front porch extension rather. So I informed him that the only way forward to proceed at this point would be a variance, and walked briefly through the requirements of the same. So I don't know if the commission if he's removing those items from the application, then the only items that remain are the replacement of the roof on the porch and the replacement of the rear steps with the composite material. Although I would assume, and Mr. Thompson, please correct me if I'm wrong, that if you're still investigating porch options, perhaps roof replacement is an issue for another time as well.
Yes, that is.
This is Tom Kerr. I have a question. I don't have my ordinance book in front of me, but I thought my memory was that porches were excluded from the setback requirements, only the building. But again, I'd have to go get the book and research it. Does anybody have access to that?
I believe.
He has it.
Let's go into the dogs.
David, do you know the answer to that question?
I don't have my ordinance book in front of me, and my dog is going to interrupt me here shortly. So I can try to pull up the answer if everyone will give me just a second.
Mhm.
I went over to Willow Avenue this afternoon, and there's a porte cochere on the property immediately north at 1085 Willow.
It's been there a long time.
Yeah.
And
So
one
it
other
looks like early 20th century.
And one other question I have, if we get accepted, if we can find the ordinance and it's acceptable. From the only structural drawing I saw was a sketch front elevation, and it didn't seem to, it looked like the porch extension over the carport section was cantilevered out into space. And I'd like to know if there are any other structural drawings to go with this application.
No, there isn't. I was told that I only needed the bare minimum stick drawing, so that's what I provided. I can easily provide you with more detailed drawings.
Yeah, I mean, the building inspector would need better than, or more detail than what, the stick drawing.
Okay.
And we frankly do too, because we can't really, like I said, it looks like it's just cantilevered out there without any support.
Well, if you, like that lady said at 1085, the house just north,
Uh-huh.
it's pretty much I will be pretty much duplicating that.
Is it cantilevered without any column support?
No, they have
Okay.
they have 2 columns and a base of stone.
Okay, so
For the
those are
columns.
the kind of details we would need to approve the application and for the building inspector to follow up and inspect the construction.
Okay.
So I can go ahead and answer your question, Tom, regarding the porch. So under our zoning code, unenclosed front porches can extend into the front yard, the distance not exceeding 10 feet. The proposed was an extension of 9 feet. So therefore that would qualify and would conform with the code.
No, it would, sorry to interrupt you, but the extension would only be 3 feet from the house. 3 feet from the current porch.
It would measure the entire depth of the porch.
Oh, okay, okay.
So if it's 9 feet at its longest point or deepest point, then that would be the measurement point for the code. So if it is 9 foot, that would qualify.
Okay, thanks, David. Do we consider
And would
the
that be from-
carport a porch roof as well?
Carports would be different. Carports are classified as part of the structure, not as a porch. It really comes down to how easily it would be to enclose that space.
Yeah.
Because front porches are otherwise called out as just that, front porches. Carports are handled separately.
Okay. Because it's almost like a porch with poles that you pull a car under, but okay.
David, what section of the code were you referring to?
You might have dropped
David?
Give me just 1 second here. The section is 15455E.
All right. You can continue discussing. I'm just going to look it up. Ultimately, I think the question before us is, do we have enough information to make any decision? From what I saw, I feel like I'm flying blind. I don't think we have enough information for the architectural appropriateness, much less the materials and everything else. So my suggestion will be that the commission defer this particular application till next month. Actually, it's later this month. Our July meeting is June the 28th. And that way we'll have an opportunity to review the architectural renderings, a more detailed bit of information about the setbacks, as well as the materials. But certainly I'll defer to the members of the commission if they've got other thoughts.
Yeah, I'd like to know if when you do your drawings, are you planning on making it identical to what's here now and just out another 3 feet with the same details as far as the crown molding on the columns and the railings? Is that all going to be the same?
Yes, very similar. A more modern look to match the houses that's on that street.
Very similar or more modern are two different answers, and I think we'd want to know, is it going to look like it looks now? If it's going to change, we need to know specifically how it's going to change.
So it's going from a box gutter roof to a shingle roof. So it would be drastically different. It'll have gutters. It would look, like I said, similar to the houses that sandwich it. They both have shingle roofs on their porches with gutters. I was going to match those.
Bob, in the
I
current
understand.
roof, a flat roof, is the current roof a flat roof that he's talking about with the box gutters?
Yes.
Yeah, so they're going with a pitched roof with gutters, regular gutters. If you look at that drawing.
Well, we'd need to know what the pitch is going to be and how it impacts the windows above and how that all ties together. We need to see that.
So
Okay.
this is Dan Mazum. I'm looking at a Google Street View of it, and there seems to be a very, very, very slight slope to that roof. And if I'm not mistaken, it seems either like a very low profile metal roof, or maybe not an EPDM, but it's a very low profile roofing material. And the columns have obviously been updated since the original build. So if you're going to match those columns over on the end with two that flank that portagere, that's great. Again, to everybody's comments, we just need to see that. And the roof at the neighboring home is definitely a steeper pitch, which is great because it needs that, and it probably would help with drainage. But yeah, to make a final decision on this, and I'm not sure if kind of from the porch down that's actually less than 18 inches. So, I mean, there's just a little more detail that needs to be covered on that. And then in regards to the neighboring house that already has the drive-through portagere, there's a downspout that shows drainage to the street or to surface. So how all that is being addressed as well. So it looks like as the neighborhood slopes down the street, unless the Google view is skewing that a little, it would be draining down towards the neighbor's house. So I would agree with a little more information in detail if we could. That would be helpful.
No problem.
And with a shingle roof, you have to be very careful that you have enough pitch for a shingle roof. You may have to lessen the exposure on your shingles to make that work per code, because I believe it's maybe a 412 might be the minimum that you can have on a slope of shingles.
And if you could, whatever that existing material is, I'm trying to see it on the top of the house roof. It looks like an asphalt shingle as well.
Yes, it's a rubber roof.
Okay, so no, I meant on the very top house of the roof.
Oh, that's
On the
shingles.
porch roof. If those could be complementary, even matching, I don't know the age of that shingle roof on top, but if they could be complementary or as close as possible, just so they do match and it doesn't stand out, I think that would be helpful. I mean, I
Okay.
cannot dictate color. I'm just trying to notice what would fit it within that, the language of the materials of the house.
Okay.
One other suggestion is go to Lowe's and look at Aratis, AERATIS. It is a composite board that looks exactly like typical tongue and groove flooring, and it's approved by the National Historic Preservation Committee and will be look much better than Trex. Not that we wouldn't approve Trex, but if you want to keep it looking historic, that's a better choice, and it's sometimes a little cheaper.
AZAC also makes a
Yeah,
same
they do
one
too.
that matches.
AERETRS.
Either AZAC, AZ,
EK.
EK, yeah, or Aratis, AERATIS.
All right.
And both of them make a narrow plank that mimics the old porch boards that's solid composite, and it operates very, very well.
Okay.
It would also be helpful when you provide a little more detail on what the bases are for the columns for the portagere. If you could like detail that a little, because the neighboring house does show one long base and not separate bases for each column. So I'm not saying I match them identical. I'm really not. I just don't know what the design intent from the client or the homeowner really is. So when you provide a little more detail, if you could at least show what that is, that would be helpful, taking into consideration that if a car accidentally hits it, you know, little protection, however that works for your design.
Okay.
I move we defer this application until the next meeting.
I'll second it.
Motion and second. Was there anybody in the audience that wished to address this application? Any further discussion, members of the commission? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? That's fine. Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Thompson. We'll look for you on June the 28th. And if you wouldn't mind staying in touch with Mr. Lumsden, he'll fill you in on the type of information that would be helpful to us.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to our next request, that's the request of Richard and Nancy Rumsen for a fence at 1054 North Troy. Is Richard and or Nancy Brumsen available? I know we had you last month and I promptly forgotten to pronounce your name, so I apologize.
No, that's perfectly fine. My name is Richard Bromson. I'm here with my wife, Nancy. We do live at 1054 North Troy. We're new residents to Glendale, and we're in the process of fixing up our house. We're asking for a privacy fence. Our lot is very narrow. Houses on either side are very close. So we're asking for a 6-foot high wood privacy fence. And I believe you have the details on that. We're also asking for a shed for our backyard because there is no garage on the property currently.
I'll take an opportunity here to chime in and say that the shed does not exceed 150 square feet, so it would not require review by the Planning Commission. The only item on the agenda this evening is the fence.
Yeah, I didn't see a shed on the application, so that explains why. It's fine. Okay. All right. The fence that you're proposing is strictly in the rear yard, correct?
That's correct. It goes from each of the rear corners of the house out about 100 feet.
All right. Members of the commission, you've had a chance to see the application materials. Is there a motion? Questions, comments, discussion?
What is the material of the fence? I can't find it on here.
It's going to be a treated pine.
And then it'll be stained or painted at some point?
That's to be decided. We're going to let it go natural or we're going to stain it. It's going to be set in concrete, with the posts.
And so you're aware of our requirement that the finished side must face out?
Out towards the neighboring house?
Right.
Yes.
Okay, so this is Mr. Mason really quick. So with 105-foot depth and a property at, if I'm reading this correctly, 351 feet deep. So is the rest of the property just open then at the back?
It is open at the back, yes.
And is that, just curious, is the 105 feet back or the distance back, is that just to provide a specific area, more caretaken or yard or controlled for like family or pets, or what will happen to the area at the back? Not really concerned about the privacy back there or what?
Yeah, the area at the back is pretty well open to the neighbors. There's not much back there.
Okay.
Some wood. We want the fence where the privacy for the houses on either side. Plus, we do have 2 greyhound dogs that we'd like to let loose in the make them secure in the back.
Okay, just curious. I just didn't know your intention for the back area. Thank you.
So is this a square top fence? I see nothing, no picture or anything. Maybe I'm missing it, but no picture of the fence at all in here.
I thought that's a photo right there, Bob.
Oh,
Yeah, it's a dog-eared fence at the top.
Okay, I couldn't see.
Yeah.
I thought it was just a photo that didn't take or something. So dog ear, okay. Got it. Okay. You ready for motion?
Yes.
I move that we accept the application as drawn.
I'll second that motion.
Motion second. Any further discussion? Anyone in the audience wish to address this application? Members of the commission, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right. Well, let's move on to the last item of action on our agenda tonight. That's a continuation of our consideration of the application for the Eckstein School at 42 Washington. Let me give a little bit of recap of where we are and where we're going. Last month, I think most of you will remember that we continued the public hearing. We had actually 2 sessions of public hearings, and where it was open to the public and the public was heard. And in fact, members of the public, at least many members of the public were heard twice last month. When we heard from the public, we closed the public comment portion of our hearing, and the commission began its deliberations. And that's where we are essentially now. We paused our deliberations to allow tours of Mimi's house in Sim Township. And the applicant was kind enough to open up the house on 2 consecutive Saturdays for tours. I know that I took a tour, and others on the commission took tours as well. And in fact, I took a tour of the neighborhood around the Mimi's house itself. So today we are reopening the commission's deliberations on the application. As I mentioned, public comment on this particular application before the Planning Commission has been closed, but I want to stress that that doesn't mean that the public doesn't have a voice. Keep in mind that whatever action we take as members, as a Planning Commission, ultimately is just a recommendation to the Village Council. Once we make a recommendation for or against, that is forwarded to the Village Council, which will then schedule its own public hearing, in which, again, the public will be heard in whatever fashion is appropriate based on the deliberations of that body. Once we, meaning the Planning Commission, end our deliberations here tonight, I'll ask for a motion, again, to recommend approval or denial. And I'll ask the Planning Commission members to couch their recommendation in terms of the criteria that we must use in reviewing any conditional use. And in particular, there's 3 criteria: effect on the neighborhood, conformance with the village plan, and effect on traffic. Those 3 criteria were discussed at quite some length during our deliberations last month, as well as during the public hearing process. Once again, we'll vote. My goal is to vote tonight on a recommendation. We'll translate that into a formal recommendation to council, and that will be forwarded to the Village Council. I'm not sure if they'll hear it later this month or if it'll be in a subsequent month, and you don't need to answer that if you don't want to, Don.
Well, I can't really answer it at this point until I sort of see the recommendation and that, but
Sure.
My plan would be to put it on the agenda for the June 28th council meeting if we get a recommendation in time to do so.
Okay.
But the problem is, if we're going to set up a public hearing, there are notice requirements on that, which at this point elude me. So that could extend the timing a bit.
Okay. Well, in any event, there is, as you heard from myself and from the mayor, there's another opportunity for the public to be heard. We've had 2 public hearings in essence, 2 meetings with public comment. Tonight, the purpose of our meeting tonight is to deliberate and to decide. One final thing that I want everybody to keep in mind is that we are only reviewing the conditional use application based on the criteria that I listed just a few minutes ago. If it's approved ultimately by Village Council, the conditional use is approved, it must come back to this body for what's called a certificate of appropriateness. And in that process, we will review the actual physical plans for the property. We've already heard that it entails demolition of a significant part of the building, the back part of the building, construction of a new assisted living facility in that space. So those are items that we will be reviewing if and when the conditional use is passed by the Village Council ultimately. So with that bit of introduction, again, it's time for the Planning Commission to deliberate. Members of the commission, what are your thoughts?
This is
Having visited me.
Kerr.
Tom Kerr? Yeah,
Do
go
you
ahead.
wanna- Did somebody else want to start? Okay,
Yeah,
I'll go.
no, it's just you.
As I review and read our ordinances and the village plan, just like I see that under conditional use, this use is listed specifically as a allowable conditional use, just like the church on East Willow that wanted to be a B&B, it was listed as specifically as prohibited use under conditional use. So from that aspect, it seems appropriate to me. The other aspect, the impact on the area, frankly, I don't think once it's all said and done and the dust is cleared, as far as the conditional use aspect goes, ignoring the aesthetic and architectural discussion, which, as you said, would come later. I don't think it'll be that big of an impact once it's in place, and for two reasons. One, just to the west is the park as a buffer to the house on that side, and on the other side, it'll have we think it'll have a privacy fence the whole way to the next neighbor, and there's the cemetery across the street. And like situations, these kind of facilities, they don't really disrupt the neighborhood that much once they're in place, because the traffic flow of the type of individual that'll be there is next to nil. So when I consider those three aspects of it, I find it to be an appropriate conditional use, and that's it for me.
Thank you, Tom. Mr. Green?
Yeah, having visited Mimi's house last weekend, I concur with Tom that the effect in the neighborhood will be minimum. It's clearly in compliance with the village plan, and traffic is not an issue. You wouldn't even know it's anything but a house if you go by it. There's no signs, and there didn't appear to be any extra traffic other than a couple extra parking spaces on the property. And I did listen to the last two meetings that I missed. I wanted to make sure I went back and picked up everything. And there's a lot of people who are complaining about the construction, et cetera, regardless of what's going to be done to this property. That will happen. So let's stay focused on the three things that are really important here. And I concur that this is an appropriate use.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Green. Beth?
I also concur with my colleagues on their analysis of the impacts on traffic, neighborhood, and compliance with the village plan. I too visited the facility in Sims Township, and it was in a very upscale neighborhood. From the outside, it looked like a single-family home. It was very quiet. There were no signs. You would never know that it was a convalescent home. There were no cars, there were no ambulances. So I too feel that this is an acceptable conditional use.
Excuse me, could I jump in one more comment I forgot to mention on the notes? And historically, there is a precedent. The Sisters of Transfiguration had a similar conditional use facility years ago in the village, in another area of the residential area of the village. So I forgot to mention that there is a historic precedent for this type of facility. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Tom. Dan or Leslie, I can't see you, but we can hear you.
Well, this is Leslie. I'd like to speak. I disagree with the members that spoke up. As a social worker, I have worked with residents of residential living facilities. They get sick in the middle of the night. They have disruptions in placement. And though I also went by Mimi's house, and it is very nice in a beautiful neighborhood, even though I did not go into the facility. But the house is in the back of the neighborhood. It may be a good half a mile, maybe in the back of the neighborhood. Extant School is maybe 50 to 60 feet from the corner of a very busy area. I think it's going to be at risk to residents if someone got out of the facility. I also think when there are going to be soccer meets and family visits, parking is going to be limited. So I disagree. I think it will be an adverse effect on the neighborhood. I think it is going to be an adverse effect on traffic. And I reviewed the Glendale plan, and maybe I overlooked it, but I did not see a residential facility listed in the conditional use. So I disagree. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. Appreciate that.
So for Dan Mazum, for myself, so fitting into the overall plan, I can see how as a conditional use, it could fit into that. I do have a concern regarding the traffic. We do have a very, I would say, not necessarily tranquil, but we have a very low flow traffic on the street itself. And we do have hiccups with soccer meets and soccer practices. So it creates a lot of congestion for that. I don't fully understand in regard to the maximum capacity of what visitors, potential life safety vehicles that could be coming to the site and what disruption that could have to the area, how frequent the residents are there versus long-term and short-term, as well as the neighborhood itself living a block away from that. I know the tranquility of the neighborhood, and I know the kind of how the residents themselves, how we work within that in regard to kind of looking out for each other in regard to whatever development's happening. So if this is primarily just for the use and not the style or the design itself, I'm concerned about if granting this conditional use, what that could mean for any kind of advanced or future renovations or maximum capacities on this and what kind of doors that could open for expansion. I know that the site itself was reduced for the footprint, and part of that was given back to Saunders Park, but I don't have a comfort level, a good comfort level on the maximum capacity that could be done on that site if a conditional use is offered.
All right. Thanks,
Well,
Dan. Bob?
If there were any expansion requested, that would have to come before the commission. They couldn't just expand without
Well,
permission.
sure. Any expansion of a conditional use requires
So I
another
would
conditional
consider
use.
that really important. I live across the street from the other care facility that was mentioned over on Albion, and we never had a problem. There were emergency vehicles, maybe 3 or 4 in 10 years, but not a mass of them. And now it's used as a convention center, and it's also fine. There's no problem with it. It's a good neighbor. And I own a property at 22 Washington, which is just right down the street from this property. And I'm in favor of it. I think it would be an improvement for the neighborhood. And I just don't know what else that property is going to be used for. And I just hate to see it just deteriorate even more.
Can I add one more comment? This is Leslie.
Yeah, sure.
The nursing facility that was at Bethany was behind a 6-foot cement wall. And if ambulance came in or out of the Bethany complex, it would not adversely affect the neighborhood because, again, the noise would be muffled a bit because of the wall that's around Bethany. There would not be a wall around Eckstein, and it would have a direct effect on the neighborhood.
All right.
Well, there were 2 large openings in that wall, two entrances into that facility, very, very wide openings. And we could see when the ambulances were in there, we could see the ambulance, and it just was not a problem.
Tom, can I ask Mr. Dillinger a question?
I think so. I mean, as long as we don't get too deep into additional testimony.
My wife is on the edge of this business in gerontology, and she looked up some of the laws. And if what she said is correct, and I wanted to check it with you, the maximum you can have in a residential area is 16 rooms. Is that correct? That is correct. So that they'll be at the maximum allowed by state law at the time they build this, and unless state law changes, they could not expand this facility.
Okay. All All right. Well, I think we've heard from everybody except for me. And I don't need to duplicate what was been said. I would say that I do agree with Mr. Green, Miss Sullenberger, excuse me, and Tom Kerr. So when a motion is made, if a motion is made to recommend approval, I will be voting in favor of a recommendation of approval. Is there a motion?
I move that we approve the conditional use and then send this to council.
And the basis is all the reasons that we've
Yes.
discussed in our deliberations. Okay.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion, members of the commission? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Was that an aye, Tom?
That was an aye, Tom.
Okay. Opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so the last two votes were opposed. Everyone else was voting to recommend approval. All right, once again, this will be translated into a document suitable for sharing with the commission. My goal is to have that to them soon. What did I say? Commission council, correct. To have that to them even by the end of the week, if not sooner. Then the ball is in their court. They will schedule their own public hearing following notice, and then have an opportunity to be heard from everybody. Any other business to come before the planning commission?
Hearing none, Mr. Chairman, I move we adjourn.
Motion, is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I made that opportunity available, yeah, right after our vote. I'm sorry? Did you have other business that you want to address to the commission? We've adjourned, but I'll leave it to the commission if they want to stay and. Well, I'll leave it to the members of the commission. I'm happy to stay. We are adjourned, but if they want to stay, they can stay. If the members want to leave, they can leave. But we have until 7 o'clock. If you want to speak, please, you have the floor. Sir, go to the microphone. People on the internet probably cannot hear you.
My name is Kevin Parrish. I'm a resident of Village of Glendale at 176 Washington. Also, I'm the voice for the muted Black voices that are too intimidated to come and speak at these meetings, committee meetings and council. We had no doubt that you guys would approve the conditional use of the Black school. Furthermore, maybe the public doesn't know that in 2009, when you acquired the school back again, since then, you guys have been absent. You acquired the school back in 2009, and you haven't appropriated not one penny out of the finance department for this historic school. Anybody have an explanation for that?
I do. This body has no appropriation authority. We have no budget. That's village council function.
Glendale Planning and Historic Preservation, an historic school that falls under your committee.
Well, you asked if we had ever appropriated funds.
Oh,
for
I
that
know
school.
you haven't because I
Well,
go to the
I answered your
meetings,
question.
but I'm wondering why. I can tell you, the level of racism in this community has surfaced and come out of the closet. It has. It has been so obvious that I don't understand why there's an attack on historic artifacts in this community. This community was an abolitionist community, underground tunnels designed before this community was incorporated. If you guys have problems with that, then you have problems with history. But for you to try to erase it is impossible. The landmark property, you say that you didn't own it and denied that in council, and yet you know that it's yours. You were trying to get Dries to develop it. soliciting for development on property that you say you didn't own. If you keep on lying to the public, then you're not useful to us. People don't understand the power of their vote. We put you in office and we can remove you. My main obligation and determination is to show the corruption, the collaboration, and to show just how much criminality has happened in this community based upon the public auctions, that format, the transfer of the property, that mysterious $55,000 final payment for the transfer from the Princeton Board of Education to the Village of Glendale, formerly known as the Village of Glendale Board of Education, on the initial transfer, and how sketchy and unexplainable those things have been. The lack of transparency always has a cloud of criminology attached to it. But I'm not going to bore you with all of that, because only thing I wanted to do was just, for the record, make it known that the Glendale Planning and Historic Preservation Commission all need to go to the eye doctor, because we don't understand what you're looking at when you don't see the significance of a 160-year-old house that was converted into a school to teach Black kids, when in the Village of Glendale's planning, they weren't planning on teaching Black kids. They were planning on just training them for domestic work. That's what's in the planning commission and history of this village when it comes to Black kids being educated. You guys need to start researching the massive amount of history that is here that you seem to keep on overlooking. It seems like we have reverted back to slave-type techniques, stealing ideas of Black residents, putting your own name on it, plagiarism, all of that. But the sad part about it is that most of you have not been in this village as long as the Black residents have. And yet you've done less for us than anybody. The only reason you're up at Washington Park now is because your other two parks are unusable. Growing up around Washington Park, you didn't show any attention to it. And now you show attention to it because it serves for your white kids. Well, if this is going to be a community cannot be a community without diversity. You keep excluding us out of the big picture, but you need us to continue. This community was based on some great local white heroes that had enough courage to put their lives on the line to fight against injustices and free Blacks. That's long gone.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman, let me just state for the record that all of our residents are welcome to come before us and express their views on whatever they want to express. But I will not sit by idly and listen to people being accused of being criminals. And if Mr. Parrish or anybody has evidence that we have engaged in criminal conduct, he knows where to go, and he knows the address of the prosecutor's office for Hamilton County.
Appreciate that, Don. I have no further comment. I don't think it deserves a comment, but I do appreciate yours. Anyone else on the commission? Anyone else in the audience? We're adjourned, so we're free to leave.
The live stream can now be ended.